everyone. Good to see you. Give everyone a second for their Zoom to catch up and hop on in, and then we're going to get going. I hope you're all doing really well. Excited to have some good conversations with you this morning. I see a lot of faces. Everyone's feeling good. That's awesome. All right, as people keep joining, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll get going here. All right, so today we're going to be talking about data sense making. We've obviously had a lot of opportunities to collect data and start looking at it and talking about it. And so today that's what we're going to be focused on, both for our own hubs and also for the upcoming in-person PLC. Just before we get started, I wanted to give a couple updates on things that we talked about last time. So there were some questions in the last PLC about my registry. So a couple things are happening as a result of that. I have asked my registry to share with us the ideal way to list FCCN trainings and events, because I know there were a couple different ways of doing that. We kind of wanted to know what was the most effective. So I'm waiting on a response from them. And we're also progressing towards making that update. I remember that you had shared with me that there is some discrepancy between the hub survey that asks you to talk about what your TA events were and how the TA events are listed within my registry. Unfortunately, that's taking longer than I thought it would take, but I do think we're on track to make sure that at least for the last quarter and then moving forward, those will be corrected. So I've submitted the request for that to happen. And so also of note, my registry folks wanted to join us in June, both the support hubs who have questions about becoming a training sponsor organization, but also to answer questions about course approval and anything else related to FCCN that they might be able to support with. That's coming up. Also, just wanted to let you all know that we're working on also making sure that there's an additional FCCN touch point with licensing to support a lot of the conversations that we've been having around what are the changes or what are the feedback pieces that we really want to make sure licensing understands about home-based providers. And I know that many of you are working with licensing closely already in different capacities and supporting them with their rollout of the new home-based rules, and that's really fantastic as well. So we want to just make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak with them, because we've heard some things about some regional differences that we want to be able to support with. And then I do also have one question for you all. I'm hoping we are looking for currently a new Salesforce vendor, and so I was asked to throw out a question to this peer learning community. Could you please put in the chat if you utilize Salesforce, and if so, what vendor you use? So this is not like a test or anything of that nature. We're kind of on the search for a good vendor. So throughout the PLC today, if you want to just pop that in the chat, I will be able to save the chat at the end and get that to folks at ECIC who want to know. So thank you very much. All right. So our agenda for today, we're going to basically cover three things. We're going to talk about data sense making. We're going to talk about how to look at our data and categorize it and think about how we can get more curious about what the findings are showing us, and then consider some next steps for analysis. So it's not going to be a huge all day we're looking at data and talking about it, but instead we're really going to think about how do we each take our own data a little bit further. Next, we're going to talk about some details for the in-person PLC. We'll talk about what to expect. I'll give some time to answer questions that you might have. And then because it was such a big hit last year, we're going to want to talk about the gallery walk this year. And we'll talk about some instructions for that and also answer questions. And then finally, we'll dive into an activity based around that gallery walk prompt that we have for you this year. All right, so just to get things started, I did want to start with a kind of like get a sense of the room on how you're all feeling when it comes to looking at and working with your data. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. so that we can, let's
You
see.
have reached your destination.
So I believe the poll has now launched. And so if you're able to see those things, you can give a rating between 1 and 5 about how confident you're feeling about analyzing the findings in your hub data, and then also how confident you feel about using the findings in your hub data. So just getting a sense. Seeing lots of responses coming in. That's great. Okay, just a couple more seconds on that one. Selections. All right, so I will end that poll and share some results. I believe these should be on screen for you now, but just to give a sense, I think we've got a good range of 3s and 5s, and sometimes it can feel difficult. I find this personally, so I'm excited to be able to work through this with you all today because we do collect a lot of data in this initiative, and we really want to work collaboratively on thinking about what are the stories behind it, and also what use are we going to make of it. So there are uses that the initiative, that the Innovation Fund wants to make. There are uses that we feel are helpful for you all to make, and then there might be uses that we haven't thought about yet that support other partners around the state. So we'll be getting into that a little bit today. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so to get us all on the same page, we're going to kind of dive in with a few slides about how we think about interpreting data that we have. So in general, for this initiative, we think about our data in kind of 2 buckets. We've got descriptive data that helps us to understand who we're serving, and we've also got outcome data that helps us to think about the impact of the activities that we're having. And so typically when we're starting to get into interpreting, when we send back the hub survey, the network member survey results, or when we dive into looking at the hub surveys, the first thing we want to think about is what type of data are we looking at? So if it's descriptive data, it's data that helps you understand like who is actually in your networks or who isn't yet. And so some examples of that might be the demographic data, hours of operation data, whether network members are serving children with IEPs. All of those things are things that we aren't like directly impacting or trying to change, but they let us know what type of home-based childcare providers or what needs home-based childcare providers have that are in our networks. And some steps for interpreting that is to think about who might be missing here when we look at this information, either from the data, who maybe did not, that we know is in our network, didn't really respond or chose not to respond to the network member survey, because that can be helpful about us understanding really what is the scope of the rest of the information that we're looking at. And we also might think about who's missing from our networks. Who have we not been able to reach? For whom are there more significant barriers to the way that we do things and to the way that we offer the membership to networks? And then secondly, it's also important to reflect on whether you're hearing from multiple perspectives. So if you see in your descriptive data that you're serving a lot of people who serve children with IEPs, for example, or let's say you have a really high number of people responding saying that they utilize the food program, you might then think you may want to expect to hear from folks who are having those situations. And if you haven't yet, that can also be something that you utilize for your programmatic improvements to say, we haven't heard these perspectives. I wonder what folks in our networks are thinking about it or are experiencing with it. The other type of data that we can look at is outcome data. And so the outcome, how you know you're looking at outcome data is if it's something that you're hoping to impact with your FCCN activities. So some examples of that might be the percentage of LEPs who are reimbursed at level 2, whether or not people are administering developmental screenings, and then that section of impact statements is another great place to find outcomes. Like what is the outcome people are feeling? And the next steps with outcome data are to first and foremost dig deeper, to explore what barriers remain if you see an outcome that's lower than you thought it would be or lower than you expected. And you can explore that by asking follow-up questions in your meetings. You can explore that by looking if there's other data that confirms or denies that information. And if your outcomes are really high and positive and you're feeling really good about them, it's a great moment to reflect and think, what did we do so far or what have we done that contributed to that finding? Oftentimes there's a lot of things that there are a lot of services out in Michigan that can support folks. And so it's important that we always think about what was our piece of the puzzle? How did we contribute as well to the systems that are supporting network members? And then lastly, with the next steps there, you might consider how outcomes compare to home-based childcare who are not in networks. And that's kind of a tougher question because within this initiative necessarily always collect that information. We don't have access to it the same way, but it is worth us wondering about, does this data seem like something that, when we talk to other partners in the community, or if we talk to our resource center partners, is this something that seems like it is matching a trend that we see in home-based childcare providers, or that it feels really different from that? So I'm going to pause for just a second before we move on. Does anyone have any questions so far about identifying what type of data they're looking at when they're going through their stuff? If not, totally cool. We'll move on to our next section, and we'll have plenty more opportunities to discuss and ask questions. So the next step after you've identified what type of data you're looking at or trying to explore more deeply, it's time, the next step is analyzing. And so one of the big things that we hear a lot about, or we talk a lot about with you all, is like, how do I use this when I have if I have a high response rate or a medium response rate or a low response rate? Because sometimes you might think if I have a low response rate, it doesn't necessarily help me to understand everybody who's participating in my networks. And we definitely hear that and understand it. And so one of the things that we want to invite for the analysis phase is using the data that you get as a jumping off point. So you want to ask your network members to discuss the questions from the survey that you wish you had more information about. Those are really good ways to let people know that their voice is still important, even if they didn't fill out the survey. You still want to understand more from them. And typically, what you can learn when you have the conversation is a lot more than just the like, oh, this is how many people do this or not. However, if you have a higher response rate, you can utilize those numbers to identify where you want to look, because this project, the scope of the initiative is really, really broad. And so what we would be using the numbers for is to point out or identify where you want to explore further. And so that's why in this flow chart, if you have a medium to high response rate, what we would say is you want to pick a few results that stand out and that aren't necessarily ones where you feel like you understand the full story already. Some advice there would be to show folks the data, but remember to show it to them in a way where you're like, this is who we have been able to hear from and what they think. And then you can ask for reactions. Like, does this make sense? Is this like adding up? We think it means this. Does that ring true for you? And kind of build on that into a conversation. And so inviting and you also want to make sure you're inviting discussion from non-respondents. We know we didn't hear from a large portion of you or some portion of you. Is this making sense to you? Is this something that is there something you want us to know here that relates to what conclusions we're drawing? And that can be really valuable. All right. And then third in the interpretation step is really to share and act on findings. So all of our FCCN hubs are doing very important work. And what we see the data being able to do is to help us share that with an audience who is looking to understand kind of bite-sized information at a point in time. And it helps us when we're working with it to share out, and to make those programmatic improvements. So we need to have like bite-sized data that we can talk about quickly to talk about our impact, but then also more in-depth data that we explore in order to make improvements that really suit the network members who we're working with. So I want to ask, I'm opening a question to the floor. based on what you've looked at so far, who needs to know more about what home-based childcare providers in your region are experiencing in networks? So if you think about like different audiences for the data and the findings that you draw from it, who would you say needs to hear more about what you're learning? And you can either come off mute, which would be easiest because then I can call on you, or we can hear everybody. You can also use the chat if you would like. Anyone want to give an example of who jumps to mind? Seeing some come in the chat. Awilda has said families in the area with small children. I find that's really, really an interesting audience. So thinking about families, what might families want to know about the how the networks are supporting their home-based childcare providers? Barbara's added legislators. Joni, potential funding partners. I definitely agree with that. We definitely want to be thinking about how we can package up the information for folks who are looking for solutions, definitely. Aubrey's adding regional childcare coalitions. Kim, licensing, food program. Yes, a lot of the questions that we're asking about are right there about systems and how home-based providers are navigating systems. I definitely agree. I think that's really valuable to have those systems leaders also understand. MyLeap, definitely. Folks who are open 24 hours and can't attend the meetings. Gwen, I see your response there. That's a really great one too. Folks who may not yet be able to participate in FCCNs but are wondering about what impact they could have and how to get involved. Additional funding partners, excellent. I'm going to show these are great responses. Some of the example you've covered the examples that we thought of and more. So I really want to invite as we're going through the next few slides, we'll be looking at some examples of some data, and I really would like to invite discussion on who it is that we feel might need to know this information or might have information for us that would help contextualize what we're working on. So to start that conversation off, I'm going to show on the next, I believe it's 3 slides, we have some examples that are from the initiative broadly. And what I'm going to do is give an example of how we at the Innovation Fund might take a similar process through the steps that I just described. And then I have some questions for you. So this first one that we're looking at is across the initiative, how are across the 13 elements that make up the provider voice scale, how have our hubs operated in such a way to give these results? And so we look at the results. It creates a score from 1 to 5. I did want to make sure that you see this arrow here. The axis here, I've made it start at 3 because when it's 1 to 5, all of our hubs have done incredibly, incredibly well, have scored incredibly high on making sure that providers have voice within this initiative. And so there's very little variation. You'll notice that nothing goes below like a 3.6. No score has ever been below a 3.6. The numbers on here are the average for the initiative, with the ranges detailed by these bars. And so we're going to dive right into it. When we look at that from an initiative level, we are extremely proud of the work that you are all doing, because many initiatives, the reason the FCCN initiative was even put together was because home-based providers did not feel seen or served adequately by some of the things that were available. They were like, this is not specific enough to us to be really helpful. And this information or this data really demonstrates that all the work that you've done, putting each step of the way, being really intentional about including provider voice, has paid off really effectively. And we can be really proud of that. That's something that we want to share out. I have a few questions for you. So if I could get one or two people to come off mute and share. Does this match how you feel when you're working with your network members?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chris. Would you say which of these elements of provider voice are you most proud of to see in these results? So these are all the different elements. Are there things that like you look for or you feel the most proud of helping network members to include their voice?
I kind of feel like all of them put together, right? But I'm looking at like network gives me a chance to ask questions, and that makes me super proud because we're listening. That's the
Hmm.
whole point of this, right? Is to listen. I'm super curious, and you haven't asked this question yet, but I noticed this in our survey as well. But my network changes to support my needs. It's still high, but lower than the rest. So that's super curious to me. Is that the person that's afraid to speak up? Is that a person that, for whatever reason, we're not listening to? Or yeah, so that's where my brain goes. But
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. And yeah, I definitely invite anyone to also share curiosities that they might have on this slide. I think when we look at the network, so when we look at all of these, we know that we didn't hear from everybody in this specific survey. And so one of the questions that you're asking, Chris, is really important, which is who didn't we hear from, and did they have a story to tell us about how they would respond here? Anyone else have anything that jumped out to you when you looked at the provider voice scale?
Sebastian, I'll just say we have a few comments in the chat as well from both Rebecca and Joni.
Thanks, Matt. Would you be okay sharing those?
Yeah, yep. So Rebecca said that she feels like it matches what they do and aim for, but always an area where they reach to dig deeper. And then Joni said, but also, would like to explore what those needs are and if there's something within their capacity to meet.
Fantastic. And one other question I want us to consider before we move to the next slide is when you look at this, who do you want to share this finding with? Who would you want to make sure understands and knows that provider voice is present in the FCCN work?
I immediately think of my leap that I want them to know that this is working. Like we're giving these people on little islands all by themselves. We're giving them a voice.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And so what I wanted to show there, and what you've really helped illustrate, is the way all of you have helped illustrate the way that there is a story behind these values. So the values are fantastic, and we're really feeling very positive about them. And the story that's behind them is so deeply valuable for contextualizing it for the partners that we work with, and also for the network members that we serve. All right, jumping to another one. So when we look at developmental screenings, we also think about developmental screenings broadly as an outcome category because it's something that we know that folks have talked about and can do trainings on. And so one of the things that we think about in our discussion is that screening is an important part of supporting child outcomes. And we're curious. So when we look at our values, we see okay, out of the surveyed network members, 55% of our licensed network members are administering developmental screenings. And then of those who are, 70% say that they've received training specifically about how to administer and interpret the screening tool, which feels really positive. That's also something that we want to make sure that when people are implementing them, they're implementing them to fidelity and they feel comfortable utilizing and accessing the tools that are out there. One of the things that a way to dive deeper would be to ask the further question: what reasons are there that network members might not be currently using developmental screenings? And we know that you all work so closely with folks that you might have answers, you might have thoughts about where that or sort of why we're at 55% and what things might be. What barriers might there still be?
I
Does
think
anyone have
a
thoughts?
specific question, like maybe a breakout part for that question, would be I think sometimes they think, are they using developmental screeners regularly, or do they use them
Mm,
occasionally? Because sometimes I will have a provider who will say, I did do a developmental screening. I don't always use them, but this
mhm.
child kind of concerned me. And so they'll pull it out. Like they have the resource and they have the tool, but they're not doing it like every 6 months or every year.
Mhm. That's perfect. Thank you for that feedback, Kim. And is that something that So it sounds to me like you had a conversation with network members to hear about how they might be interpreting that question when they see it on the survey. Is that right?
I didn't specifically with the entire group, but I did with one provider who, she's like, "What tool should I use? Because I have a question about this child's development and I kind of want to do it." And I'm like, "Well, you've used ages and stages in the past. Go ahead and use that one, and then we can talk about the results." Because it's not something she uses all the time, but she has used it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sort of extrapolating that conversation with that FCCN member to maybe they don't use it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
or well, some of them do, but not all of them. And she may have felt like, no, I don't use it in response to this question.
Mm-hmm.
However, she does use it when she feels that there's a concern about a child's development.
Right. And that's perfect. I think that feedback you're giving is really great, and it shows again how the story behind what we're looking at is super important here. So a reminder that when we're looking at the data, it helps us to hone in on where we want to ask questions. It's not the end all be all because it is a voluntary survey and we are working toward making sure that these questions are as clear as possible. So I do want to hear and I appreciate all of the feedback folks have about these questions. We can talk more about each of the questions that need improving before the next one. But for now, for our purposes for right now, in the results that you get, it really is that what's the discussion that we can have here? Where do we want to focus our attention? Thanks for sharing that. And then Shemaine, I saw also you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Kim was saying about the yeses. I'm thinking that they are not doing, well, screening all the children because that's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing. And also, some of our providers aren't aware of screeners. So these are sometimes our first time hearing about the screener or understanding what AS if they're using ASQ, that it is considered a screener. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just conversation around making sure that they understand what they're being asked and also how often it's being completed. So we're working on that actually this next month, working on child outcomes and what does assessment and screeners look for. So thank you for lifting this.
That's perfect. And thank you for lifting again that the way that the conversation adds so much value because really for us that's our hope with the data is that it leads to those conversations and learning about network members who might not know that they have a question about something. That's another really valuable piece that you bring to the table when you follow up with folks. So last question I have for you all before we move to the next slide is who else other than us in this space might we want to share the stories or the data about screening tools with. And also, yeah, feel free to put it in the chat as well. I know Amanda can give me a shout out. Any thoughts on that one? I'm also happy to suggest some. One in particular, I'm really curious to see how our resource center colleagues would reflect on this. I know that many of you are resource center colleagues or have close partnerships with resource center colleagues, but I'm curious about how our data is comparing with the full population of home-based childcare business owners in Michigan. What is their general perception of the folks that they work with, the folks that they just know are out there. Those kinds of questions I think are really valuable to give some context to what we're all working on here and to make those referral pathways nice and strong with our resource centers where we find that valuable. All right. And then lastly, I just wanted us to just take a quick look at some descriptive data. So those two were broadly outcomes, and they're outcomes because the actions that you all do are contributing to what you see. Here are some descriptive data. When we look at, again, this is initiative wide. When we look across the entire initiative, among our licensed providers who are network members, 55% report being above the household median income and 45% report being below. And then for our LEPs, 9% report being above, and 91% being below the household median income. And secondly, and I'm sorry about this, what's the word? The legend here. I couldn't get it to like work nicely across the bottom here on the axes, but we'll get some upgrades on that. But it is helpful. These are sorted by the order of age groups. And so you can kind of see a distribution from sort of youngest to oldest here, with the last group being our 70 plus group. And what you'll notice is that in both licensed and license exempt providers, our largest share of network members are in the 50 to 59 age group. And if you were to add up the sort of 50 and older group, it is larger than the sort of below 50 age group. And so one of the things to think about there is how does that play into who you are serving, and whether or not these statistics kind of match broadly who we think about when we think about the full population of home-based childcare providers in Michigan. Does anyone have any like immediate reactions to what you see on the screen here?
Coming from a resource center perspective, broadly, the providers in my region are definitely older.
Mm-hmm.
There's a small handful of newer providers coming in, but I have real concerns about the future of childcare, family childcare workforce
Mm-hmm.
if we don't gain some younger people in the field.
Mm-hmm. Thank
I
you
don't
for
know if
sharing
that's
that.
common for everybody, but that's our experience.
I agree with Kim, but I also want to note that it is generally our older, also coming from resource center experience. It's our older demographic of educators that want in person and more hands-on, whereas a lot of my younger educators tend to do a little more research on their own, self-paced trainings, a lot more things online. They're the ones who will text and send emails as opposed to wanting me to come out one-on-one. So our older ones also, I feel, join this group for support with a lot of the technology and the system work, whereas the younger ones are a little more self-sufficient.
Thank you
I
both
agree
for
with
that.
Kim and Joni.
Mhm.
I've been really concerned with, we have a lot of people that are retiring out of the field, and it's awesome because they've been doing this for 30 and 40 years. So I totally get it. I jokingly made a new policy this week that they're not allowed to retire until they find someone to replace them. So you can't leave yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, so I want to emphasize in what all of you are saying, the story behind the numbers are so important here. I'm also hearing implicitly in that some of the question that we've been asking about who might be interested in this data is also coming through here. It's important. It sounds to me like there's a need for licensing and MyLeap to know about this. And again, to see these are folks who have sought out, like Joni was saying, these are folks who have sought out being part of a network and also were willing to provide their data and share what their experiences were. But it is also relevant not only to like how we serve them, but also what the field might be experiencing. Rebecca, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, really quickly, just this age group, it's really worrisome to me. I also teach adjunct in the education department at Grand Rapids Community College, and it worries me and also breaks my heart how little we talk about family child care as a sector of places people can focus their education and move for that career. And actually had overheard a really disturbing conversation of other college professors talking about how the associate's program has more or less just become an addition to high school, and there's not a lot you can do with an associate's program. But I really disagree with that because this is one of the areas that associate's degree is more than enough really for family child care. And so it's one of those areas I think we really need to pursue the workforce development and what those colleges are really bringing to the table for what we need in our communities.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And also, thank you for raising another potential audience. Especially if you're hearing conversations where people are writing off certain kinds of education or certain career pathways. I do think that is a really helpful conversation to be had. And it's also a really helpful conversation to be had about where are we recruiting folks from? How can we support that workforce pipeline if other systems were aligned to support as well? Shanae.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it would be really helpful if we get a chance to like have Lisa or somebody look at the data or send you the data comparatively so we could see, do we see this trend? I mean, we were in our 50th year doing a summit that we
Hmm.
have 400 people there. They're all home-based childcare entities, and we see the same trend. I
Hmm.
thought it was interesting that uh, as folks were looking at the data from different age groups, that point that was brought up is really interesting because that also might speak to delivery, and
Hmm.
modalities, and um, but we also know that I mean, it's harder to get a home today. It's harder. I mean, there's a lot of factors that is contributing to the decline of the home base. As we just did the wage initiative,
Hmm.
our numbers showed 89% um, centers and 11% homes as the landscape.
Hmm.
So I just want to, we have more homes and group homes because of the size, but in terms of the number of children that they serve, so we got to keep, I think there's opportunity to continue to grow the field, but we're up against a couple of things
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing that perspective as well, Shanae. And I think you're also touching on a really important point there about like regional work that's happening. So people have, like you're pointing out, different slices of the picture, different pieces of the puzzle. And so it's really valuable for us to think about when we look at our FCCN data. One of the things we're arguing about, like arguing for, is that FCCNs are a fundamental support for folks who are at any part of the continuum of their career within home-based childcare. So it's really valuable to think about what they might look like if they were to if there were to be more opportunity for there to be home-based childcare providers. Where would they come in, and how would they be supported within our work? And I think we see that we have a broad range, but we also see the same trend that the field is experiencing. Thank you for sharing that.
Seb, I just wanted to lift. We have just great conversation going on in the chat
Oh,
right
great.
now. Just some more comments related to the college
Mm,
classes being geared towards more GSRP, child development programs, now more of a pathway for K through 12 than early
mm.
childhood. I also wanted to lift a question that Joni had in the chat of would this be worth asking NAFCC to also share data around?
Yes, that's a great one. I also hadn't thought about NAFCC, but it would be great to look at comparisons to the national data as well, and think about how not only Michigan, but also like within a sub initiative that's happening in Michigan, who are we able to reach? And I would say too, I think one of the things we're looking at is like how representative are our networks. A truth is that we want to make sure that we're reaching a representative picture of home-based childcare providers. And I know that we're working toward that as we add networks and build the work that we're doing. All right. That was great. That was a great conversation. Thank you, everybody. We are gonna, so I would, as much as I would love to continue going through each of our data points, we will find time to do things like that and to find other opportunities for us to dig deeper. However, this was a kind of jumping off point to make sure that you feel prepared to ask questions of your data and not feel restricted and trapped by uh, sort of needing to answer to a particular value. What I want you to hear is that each of these things are an opportunity to dive into conversation with your networks. And in upcoming progress meetings with Amanda, that'll also be a great opportunity to talk very specifically about how your hub is asking these questions and is diving deeper into that work. So I appreciate all of you. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get into our next activity, which is really going to be about the in-person PLC that's coming up, because I want to give everybody time to ask questions and get us all on the same page. So the in-person PLC is coming up in July. The registration email did go out. Amanda had sent that out, but we're going to just recap some things today. So as far as like what to expect, the audience there are obviously hub staff, network members, The ECIC, what we're trying to do is also have representation there from regional childcare coalitions, the policy team, the innovation fund, Great Start to Quality colleagues, so that they are also part of that discussion. I know I've heard several of you ask me about how we can start to make those pathways and those connections clearer. That's one of the ways that we hope to do so with an in-person gathering. MyLeap will also be in attendance. And all our kin and the Erickson Institute will also be there to kind of give a summary of the work that they're doing for our initiative. I do also want to let you know that we know that July is incredibly busy, and given how much is going to be going on, progress meetings in July will be shortened, and we're going to do that. We'll send out the instructions for this just so that you know what to expect. But they're going to be shortened to about 15 minutes. If you need or want longer, we can have a conversation about like when to fit that in. But what we're going to try to do is have some be just a written, like these are the things we want to touch base on with you, and then a brief connect in that time. So hopefully that frees up some time in the schedule. We also know that, and want to share that we know that there will be a lot of learning taking place at the in-person PLC, and we really do appreciate the effort that each of you put into making the event a success. It's really a team effort, and so we want to reflect that we know that takes a lot of effort. The goals for the in-person PLC are kind of fall into three buckets. The first is that we really feel that it is an opportunity for network members because it connects them to a statewide initiative and to get their voice heard by decision makers. The second is that another goal is that we want to prepare for the business series next year. So all our kin will actually be present in person at the event, which is going to be cool because those of us who are able to go through the train the trainer will be able to meet and speak with all our kin directly and get our questions answered that we might have. They're also going to host a panel discussing and highlighting the benefits of participating in the business series and facilitate an activity that gets everybody really understanding what the business series is. I think that's valuable both for our network members who will be there, but also for MyLeap and other partners to understand what is going to be available for home-based childcare. And then lastly, we want to make sure that, or a big goal for us is to share the impact of what we do in a format that actually helps educate policymakers. So the gallery walk activity that we're going to be doing, very similar to last year, was very successful last year, will create some bite-sized takeaways and visuals that support their understanding of what we're working on and highlights the perspective of network members. So I'm going to dive into the gallery walk instructions and what to expect. But does anyone have any questions currently about the in-person PLC that I can address? All right. You can also, we'll have plenty of time. I'll also pause a bunch more times. So if something does come up for you, please do put it in the chat, or we can also discuss it. Okay. So similar to last year, we are going to do the same kind of instructions for the gallery walk poster. Last year, the dimensions we gave were 25 by 30, but if you made a poster last year and it worked well on the easel, it'll work well again. So really up to you how you want to orient it, and you'll know what to expect there. One thing that is changing is the prompts, basically. Last year, we heard a lot from the hubs and what you all were wanting to share as hub organizations, and that's still important to us. But one of the things that we want to be able to make sure we're doing is featuring network member stories directly. And so how are we going to do this? We're going to do this with 4 prompts that we want everybody to be responding to the extent possible. And so those 4 prompts, we'll get into like how we chose the prompts in a moment, but those prompts are going to focus us to look at changes that that network members have experienced to their business, changes that they've experienced to their childcare practices, changes to how they connect and refer families and children to comprehensive services, and changes to how they interact with the EC system more broadly due to being a network member. One thing you might be asking, and this is relevant for folks who have either like mostly new network members or sort of came in or added a network in this fiscal year. If you feel like these questions are not going to result in people being able to like know what has happened, so if people feel like they've not been in a network long enough to answer these questions, you can modify the question slightly, and you can ask what would be the most impactful change that you hope to experience as a network member. So that shouldn't apply to very many of you, but I did just want to make sure that you knew we can do some modifications if you run into challenges. Just have a conversation with us and let's talk about it. So we're going to dive into these questions a lot more. That's the next thing we're going to be talking about. So the purpose will be to create a poster. All right. So for the gallery, we kind of envision the following next steps as we move toward the event taking place in July. First would be to, and you're probably already doing step 1 and 2, review your hub level data, complete your own data reflection and discussion in progress meetings with Amanda. 2 is to identify some data that you want to talk to network members about and share that the gallery walk is happening. And then third is to complete a most significant change activity sometime between June and July that we'll be talking about that highlights the stories behind the data that are the things that we're really hoping to talk about. And then finally, those stories will inform what goes on your poster that you would bring to the July 22nd in-person PLC. So what is this activity that I'm talking about? So I've included these slides. I'm just going to gloss over them, but in the slides that you get, if you want to read more about what most significant change is and why that methodology can be helpful, I've included a link to the paper about it. And essentially what it is a way of collecting stories from participants. And then participants are basically explaining how what they're experiencing was impacted by the initiative that they're part of, which is really valuable because oftentimes we work in environments that are really complex, really diverse, and have a lot of reasons that things might be happening. And so it's really helpful to hear participants share what they feel like is coming from what. That's really valuable to give that context to the numbers. And so why are we using it? We're using it to make sure that each of the posters are covering specific areas of interest. So those 4 categories that we'll be talking about, those were chosen because they're specific areas of interest for MyLeap and decision makers who are looking at the impact of FCCNs. So we want to make sure that we're focusing our attention on those areas to help make a really strong case when we do our final reporting at the end of the year. And we also want to give viewers a consistent set of content areas to look at across the entire initiative. So one of the strengths of doing it this way is that people can say, there's still a lot of variety and breadth across all of the work that you all are doing, and it falls into these buckets of work that are part of the scope of work for the project. And then finally, it's important why we're using it is because we want network member voice to contextualize the data we'll be sharing. This year, one of the posters will be made by the Innovation Fund, so we'll be part of the line of posters, and folks will see an initiative perspective. But then we really, really would like for that to be focused on provider experience, network member experience, because otherwise the conclusions that can be drawn might not be based in stories that have taken place. So the typical steps of most significant change are really long and a lot. We're not doing all of them. We're kind of doing a very light version of it where we've kind of pre-selected some domains of change that we want to look at. We've defined a reporting period already. It's like so far this year. We're asking people to think about like this year. If there are challenges with that, they can also think about prior years, just for those folks who might be thinking, oh, what about prior years? That's totally fine as well. But if there are stories from this year, that's great. And then these next 3 steps are what you all will be doing. You'll be collecting significant change stories from network members, selecting the most significant of the stories, or having a selection process to choose which ones go on the poster, and then ultimately feeding back the results of that selection process by putting them on the poster and letting network members see that final result. So talking briefly about how you might go about doing this. During the collection phase, you're going to want to give people these open-ended questions, which again they are all framed the same way. You're asking, what was the most significant change you made to your business over the last year due to being a network member? So it's important that the question has those components, both the fact that you're asking about changes that occurred for them, the topic that you want them to think about, and also a time frame. one thing I wanted to say here, please, so you can go about collecting these in a way that works well for you. The only thing we request is that you don't use a survey for this purpose, because conversations allow you to dig a little bit deeper and ask more questions and help someone to really articulate the story effectively. So if possible, and again, with time, I know that many of you will have already planned your network meetings that are going to be taking place over the next few months. So we know that there's going to be, we want you to be able to utilize flexibility with what works well for you. But if possible, open up the questions to as many network members as you can, so that you might hear stories you may not have previously been aware of. And then let people know as they're sharing with you the purpose of collecting the stories. And importantly, this is the sort of the other thing that in these slides that you'll get, we've included the prompts that can be really helpful for these kinds of conversations. So you want to listen for when people are answering, are they describing a change, and are they describing why it matters to them? And if you are hearing a story and they haven't yet said what changed, you can prompt that with various questions. So these are just examples, but you might say something to the effect of, what did you experience before this change, to help them to flesh out the story that we're looking to illustrate. Similarly, if they haven't really given you, if they haven't said what it meant to them, there are some prompts. Again, these are examples that you might use. So you might say, what has that change meant for you? How do you feel now that you've made the change? Why did you want to make the change? Each of those can help somebody to think about and share. Oftentimes people know it, but don't feel like it's like ready at the forefront of their mind to share. So each of those can be really helpful at helping people to express what they want to within their experience. To support this, we have created a, again, optional tool for you to use for note-taking. So in the slides that you'll get afterward, there's a template. It looks something like this, but with more spaces in it for you. To have a conversation and take notes. Oftentimes I find it's very easy to ask people questions, get a lot of good feedback, or sorry, get a lot of those stories coming in, and then not necessarily realize until I'm getting ready to put something together for a report that I didn't ask some of the prompting questions that I wish I would have. And so the idea behind this template is that you can write in the story or take notes on the story that someone's telling you, and you can listen for whether they've explained the change. Do you know what they changed from and to, and what was the significance to them? So I find this really helpful for me personally when I'm thinking about whether I should prompt somebody or if I've got what I need. Within this template, the prompts that were on that prior slide are also in there. So we'll make sure that you have that. It is optional. We're not going to collect it. It's just if it would be a helpful tool for you. All right. So before we move on, we're going to take 10 minutes to do some practice with prompting. So what we're going to do, we're going to break you up into breakout rooms. And then in those breakout rooms, you are going to do a few things. First, you're going to take about a minute or so to select a question asker. That asker is going to choose someone to respond to the question that's on this slide, which actually, now that I'm just thinking about it, I can share this slide with you all. One moment. In the chat right now, there's a PDF of the slide you're currently looking at. So you can go ahead and if you could open that prior to jumping in a breakout room, you'll then have it. And the question that you're going to be asked, the asker is going to ask is, what was the most significant change you made this year to how your networks operate? And so what I would like that respondent to do is give an initial straightforward answer. Just whatever comes to your mind, just give that straightforward answer. And then everybody else in the group, listen to what the respondent shares, and then use some of the example prompting questions to fill out the significant, or to get at the other parts of the significant change story. Then, if you have time, switch roles and repeat one other time. You do not need to record anything. You're not going to report this out. It's just to practice prompting. The only thing we'll ask at the end is how it felt and how confident you feel with this process. Does anyone have any questions before we launch those breakout rooms? All right. Sable, can you go ahead and launch those, please? All right, so you'll have 10 minutes and we'll see you back. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I see our room is populated again. Okay, so just as a kind of quick check, can I get a thumbs up, middle, or down based on how you're feeling about prompting story-based questions? Generally pretty good. Generally pretty good. Okay, awesome. And then I just wanted to see, does anyone have any thoughts or reflections about that process or any questions about the prompts themselves? Then we'll dive back into the presentation.
With our demographic of home-based providers, I'm gonna just kind of put it out there. I never struggle with getting them to give any kind of story answer for anything at all.
That's excellent. I'm really glad to hear it, Joni.
They love to talk to other adults.
Yep.
I would say maybe the one thing I would change is the word significant, just because, some of us have been at this for a few years, and so things have kind of changed a little bit differently each year. And so I think some of us stumbled a little bit on significant change. We have the work, we have the project plan, we kind of have our path. Obviously, we're always making changes, but I think the word significant was a little bit of a stumbling block and might be for the providers to respond to.
I hear that. Could you say like a little bit? So here's the why behind significant, and then let me know if there's a better way to describe it. So the reason that the word significant is used is because there are likely lots of changes, and so what we're hoping to do is have people say to them, to like in their own words, like this was what mattered to me in a big way. And so that's what's meant by significant there. It's not like how big of a change, like it's not, oh, pick the biggest change. And so maybe that's not coming across. I'm curious about, does that feel like it would be something that would be a helpful reframing?
Yeah, I would think maybe impactful might be a better word because of how it impacts them much more than how big of a change it was. I don't know. I just think significant means large to me.
Yeah, understood. That's really helpful feedback. Thank you. Cynthia, did you come off mute and say something?
I was just going to suggest what you just said makes more sense too.
Fantastic. Then right now, I think as a group, we can all agree like that you should utilize whatever word choice with your networks. We'll get them to share what is the most meaningful to the, I see Joni, you put meaningful in the chat. It is really truly meant to be from their perspective, what matters to them the most. What do they feel proud of? Or you can utilize any kind of word choice that helps you get to that. It is not about whose was like bigger than anyone else's. So thank you very much for raising that. I did not realize that was like what was coming to the fore there. So thank you for raising that. And please do, everybody, feel free to use whatever word choice it is that will help your network members to understand it's like really truly about their own feelings about what to them is important. Yes, Kim.
So are we able to adapt the questions to align better with our network? So for example, everyone, the entry point is pre-licensing. And so if you ask them, what is a change related to being a member of the network, they've not experienced not being in a network. So that's a little challenging.
Yeah, definitely. I hear what you're saying there. Let's brainstorm that question together. I'm happy to, for anybody, if you have questions about how to word the questions in such a way that gets to what we're hoping to learn, please do shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. My feeling is that yes, the questions can be modified. We want to make sure that we do so in a way that will help us to, again, achieve that goal of having each of the posters support a outside observer understanding the similarity across the scope of work. So they can see the variety, but they know that it's falling within particular buckets. That's the main goal of using the prompts.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, thanks, Kim, for raising that. All right, I'm now going to share the last couple steps here, and then we'll pause for any other questions. So let me share my screen again. Oh, okay. All of my stuff disappeared. There we go. Okay. So that was that. Then the next step, obviously, if you get a lot of stories, the important final step is as you're doing the selection process for them. I've used the word significant again. We can figure that one out. I think one of the main things here is to make sure that folks know that all of the stories that they're sharing are equally valuable because it is about their experiences. And so what you would frame is that there are, you need to make a choice about what goes on the poster ultimately. So that can be something that your network, you can determine how in your network that works best. Important reminder here that the significant, the terminology about significant here really is about what do we as a network want to make sure that we are sharing with the outside, with an outside audience. That is what is meant by significant. So please do feel free to change the terminology to suit your needs best. You can also decide with your network. You already have, all of you have have made different choices about how your network makes decisions. So please do utilize that decision-making process that you typically navigate to support them. These, what's on screen, are just examples. So sometimes what people do is like a voting or a ranking system. Other times people select a subgroup of network members, they review all the stories and they say like, oh, let's put this on a poster because it shows this impact that we think that a broader audience might be really interested in. Or you can select your own method. So it may be that you only hear from a few folks on a particular story and you try to find a way on your poster to feature both of them or feature all of them. Really, it's about making sure that as you're narrowing it down, you're supporting network members also weighing in on what is meaningful to them from a network standpoint. And then finally, the sort of last step is feeding back the results. And this is where the poster comes in. So for each question that you have a story about, you want to highlight the provider impact story on the poster and include information about what activities your hub has done to create the impact that the story is highlighting. So this is where it kind of comes full circle. We talked today a lot about numeric data. We're also talking about stories, and we're also going to be talking about the activities that lead to them. And so that's really what the poster brings together. It should be possible from the poster to see, here are some activities that we have done that have led to many different impacts. You can use numbers for that. And here is a story of one of those. As I know, there are very many creative folks in our initiative, and it's a delight to get to work with all of you. So on this, when you get the slides, there is a link to the photos of the posters from last year for brainstorming purposes. And then some additional options that you could consider. Let's say you don't get a story about something, like people didn't respond to all 4 of them with a story that they wanted to share. Please do still include data from your hub survey that relates to the impact story or the activities that you did to work toward those areas. It's really important and valuable that we're again highlighting those areas of the work that you're doing because it will give context to the initiative-wide data that the Innovation Fund is sharing. Other ideas are featuring quotes, photos, anything that you would like to in that regard. And then also another idea would be that if you got a lot of topics or a lot of stories, please do feel free and encouraged to find ways to provide a summary of all that was shared. These are things that we can develop and workshop over time, and definitely let me know if you have any questions. We will be happy to work through them. All right, so this is a final pause on what questions do you have? And I'm going to stop sharing screen. Any other questions that folks have about anything that we covered today?
I do, but it's not super relevant to the whole group at large. So I'm just going to wait on the call for everybody to leave, Sebastian.
Yep, sounds good. Yep, we will be done a few minutes early here today, so that works well. All right. So with that then, I think Amanda will share our SurveyMonkey link. And as usual, we will follow up by email with the slides, the materials that we talked about today. And then that's also another great place if questions or thoughts or feedback come up to you later on that you want to share. Please do always feel encouraged to reach out to Amanda and I, both about questions that you might have about your data or about any of the activities that we have coming up for the initiative. But with that, I'll give you a few minutes back. Thank you so much, everybody, for your participation today.